Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to SansadTV podcast. I'm Teena. In life, we often land up in situations where we have to deal with complex emotions, both on the personal and professional fronts. But as different individuals, we find different ways to deal with them. However, one question that always strikes us is, why me? As a working woman and as a mother, there have been multiple times I've asked myself this question while also trying to navigate through difficult emotions. But as I said, life is the best teacher. It teaches us through our own experiences and that of the others. I came across a book recently and had a strong sense of deja vu while reading it. Titled Soul Tweets, the book is based on interesting anecdotes from various real-life situations. While it explores the challenges we face in our everyday lives, the best part is that it showers you with a lot of positivity, making you more capable and confident of handling things with effortless ease. What surprised me even more is that this was the author's first book. She's not a full-time author, yet she succeeded in giving readers some meaningful, light and optimistic reading experience. I'm delighted to welcome on this podcast Mrs. Suman Arora, the author of the book Soul Tweets, subtitled The Lighter Side, the Brighter Side, the Writer Side. She is Additional Secretary, Lok Sabha Secretariat. Writing books, she says, is something that she does out of passion. So in this conversation with her, we'll try and explore the writer side of her. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us on this podcast, and congratulations on the two books that you've written. We'll talk about the book Soul Tweets, which I've had the privilege to also read. So as a reader and as a curious reader, I should put it like that, let me ask you about the idea behind naming the book Soul Tweets.
First of all, thank you, Teena, for having me on the show. I'm really excited about this. About the title of my book, this is actually an unplugging of my heart. All the incidents and all my experiences that I witnessed in my life, this book talks about those. And I believe that all of us are stuck in similar situations. Right. So how you handle those situations, and so all these situations involving human behavior. There have been two themes basically in this book which I've talked about. One is, no matter what, you have to learn to remain positive even in the toughest of situations. And second is, when it is about human relations, you have to maintain your balance, otherwise you get taken for granted. And apart from that, this lighter side, brighter side and the writer side, which is also a part of the title, my book is full of real life anecdotes, and I have tried to infuse healthy humor. There are interesting anecdotes. In fact, my book is based on positive psychology, which is like motivational in nature. So when somebody starts reading it, so they don't find their stressful situations stressful anymore. This is what the lighter side is about. And second is brighter side, because I'm talking about hope. My book is motivational in nature. Right. So I say that no matter how dark is the night, the tomorrow is going to be brighter. And writer side is basically because I have written this book and I have talked about my personal experiences, how I dealt with certain situations in life. And because I feel that we are more or less faced with similar situations, so I wanted to write this and share with my readers. So maybe it may help them navigate their lives better in some way. But at the end of the day, I'm saying this is only my perspective. It is not the final word.
So what has been the motivation behind writing this book? And I ask you this because a lot of your chapters are quite relatable. So when I was reading, I found that, oh, this instance has happened with me, or I know someone who's also been in similar situations. But not everyone goes on and pens down a book. You've done that beautifully, also providing solutions to people. So I am curious to know what inspired you to actually write down a book with 30 chapters in it.
First of all, what you have just said, this is the feedback I get frequently. Everybody tells me like, oh, you have written about my life. This is about my life. Right. So like I said earlier, I feel that, more or less all the situations are similar. What are we doing? We are at workplace, we are in our personal life, in neighborhood, relatives, everywhere. We are in various situations, and it's basically about human behavior. And how do we tackle those problems? Any problems? And there are two kinds of problems I feel. One over which, like, we have some control and we can handle those situations, and some situations are there we have no control over, and those are very stressful. And my theme has been despite everything you have to remain positive, and this is how I did. And I have shared my experiences, some suggestions I have given how we can remain positive in every situation, and that was the motivation behind it. I believe we all learn from one another, as because there are certain things which I learned the hard way. And I feel, why, if somebody can get some tip from my experiences and they can meet their challenges better, why not share with them? Why everybody has to learn it the hard way?
So we'll talk about these situations and how you've also provided some very simple solutions in dealing with these situations. Before that, one thing that I would like to ask you is, you're not a full-time author. You've written this book out of passion. You have a position of responsibility in the Lok Sabha Secretariat. The question here is, how do you find time to write? How do you balance both your profession and your passion, and how does that reflect in your writing?
I'm very clear about one thing. If you are passionate about something, you will have to take out some time for that. Because for me, it has been like, because of my very hectic professional schedule also, and then you have so many other things. You have to look after your family and other things, personal life, responsibilities are there, social responsibilities are there. So, you have to unwind yourself in some way or the other. For me, writing is like that. I don't know how and why, I just always got some time. Like, even if I'm having some 10 minutes or 15 minutes, I'm writing. And in fact, during holidays, if my family is taking a nap during the day, I'm writing. So I was always sleep deficient. That is one thing, I didn't think of sleeping myself, catching up with my sleep. But somehow I was so passionate. I have been so passionate about writing that, I would just keep writing whenever I got some time.
The good thing is that positivity reflects in your passion, which is writing. While I was reading, one thing that I was particularly struck by is how you've completely changed the meaning of the saying, and we often say it when we are in difficult situations, oh, my worst fears came true. And the attitude that you have towards let our best hopes come true, and that completely changes you from a pessimist person to an optimist person. So, how did that thought come about, and how does that reflect in your personality?
I strongly feel like, whatever you focus on, that materializes. Like, if you're focusing on joy, if you're focusing on positivity, so then you will be faced with a lot of positive situations in life. But when you are focusing on fears, that you are so troubled by them all the time, this is what happens. I'll tell you, it was 15 to 20 years back, I read a news item. There was a family of 4 parents and 1 daughter and 1 son. There was an air crash, and a mother and daughter got killed in that air crash. So the families of those killed in that air crash were interviewed. The father said that we always felt that we should not fly together. Whenever we had to travel, which was very frequent, even if we had to go to the same place, we would fly separately. Mother and daughter and father and son would fly separately in 2 aircrafts, because they thought that in the event of an air crash, like, at least 2 of them would survive, otherwise the whole family would be wiped out. And though he was devastated that his wife and daughter were no more, they were killed in that air crash, but to some extent, slightly, he was relieved too, saying that at least 2 of us are still alive. I strongly felt after reading that news item that it happened only because the family was so consumed with fears that it actually materialized. Whenever we read about some air crash, we also get concerned, but the next moment we go on to some other news item, we forget. But that family was totally consumed with the fear that there can be an air crash. And so 2 of us, as if, their brain found it acceptable that only 2 out of those 4 should survive. And this is what materialized. So I strongly feel we should focus more on positive things and positive thoughts.
How do you look at the positive side of things? And I ask you this because whenever we read such news items, you narrated a story, we are always affected by it. And of course, there are negative sentiments which start running our mind. Have you been an optimist person right since your childhood, or have you developed yourself into one over the years?
This is a good question. I think I have always been an optimist, because I remember I used to write poems when I was in school, even in middle school and maybe in primary school as well. So the other day I was reading those poems, and I saw that it all starts with something darkness, like it's so bad, and then every poem is ending on a positive note. So it has always been like that. If you go through you have gone through my book, and you can see that if I'm talking about a problem, I'm giving solution as well. And it is always, all my chapters, all my articles are ending on a positive note. The only thing is how I became more convinced about being positive, like that being positive leads to more positive situations, and you have to see that after all, if there is a situation where you are feeling depressed, some stressful situation is there, would you like to remain stressful all the time? I mean, throughout, if you don't do anything about it, you will be stressful all the time. So there is no other option. You have to find a solution. And I strongly feel every problem has a solution. You have to find it. Every tunnel has a light at the end of it. So we have to look for that.
So very interesting line that I came across while you were talking about this is smiling through annoyance. And I'm sure you do that quite a lot of times, because you're dealing with so many professionals and so many responsibilities also you're shouldering. The question here is, in an age where all of us are losing temper at the drop of a hat, the difficult part is to control your temper. What is the strategy that you have adopted over the years to calm down? Do you take a time out? Or what is it that you do which helps you smile through annoyance? I'm intrigued to know that.
In fact, it is quite tough to smile through annoyance, but then again I feel there is no point in remaining in a negative mood for long. It only affects our health, mental health and physical health. And I feel whatever we have inside, we can give that to others. If I am feeling irritable inside, I will be fighting with my family also and my colleagues and wherever I am, like I am. So it is better to find solutions to that problem, and if you can't find a solution, then you have to talk to your close ones if somebody can help you. And I believe we have to choose our battles carefully. It is not like every now and then you are locking horns with everybody you come across. People will try to put you down. Most of the people you come across are toxic. I mean, there are nice people also, but there are people who try to put you down, who try to manipulate you. But in a day, we all have very limited time and energy, and that's very precious. So we have to choose our battles carefully, because like they say, if you throw stones at all the dogs that bark at you, you will never reach your destination. So you have to see that there is no need to be aggressive all the time. There is no need to have a confrontational approach all the time. Just see which problem deserves your aggression. Otherwise, it is better to just avoid that situation. It is good for your own health. Like they say, Bhagwan Buddha said, holding on to anger is like drinking poison but expecting the other person to die. So you are holding that anger deep inside. So it is affecting your health. It is triggering cortisol, which is stress hormone, and then we will be suffering from mental and physical issues, insomnia, anxiety, depression, hypertension and whatnot. So isn't it better that we try to calm ourselves down?
That's right, but deep down inside, all of us know that anger is bad for us. However, there are times when you can't control yourself. It's an emotion that has to be expressed. So what do you do? Do you drink a glass of water? Do you listen to music? Do you start reading, or do you want to just write down your thoughts? What is it that has worked personally for you?
I do something or the other, like something of everything.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, I read, I try to distract myself, I listen to music, and I try to, if I can, I would rather go in for 10 minutes walk somewhere, or if I'm at home, I do yoga. For as long as I remember from my school college days, I have been doing yoga. So that helps because it calms my nerves. And in fact, there are two aspects of yoga. One is pranayam and the other is physical postures. Due to the paucity of time and the kind of hectic schedule I've had, I have never got time to sit still and do pranayam, somehow always one eye on the clock. So I have been more into physical postures. But then also, it has helped me calm down a lot and build my resilience and look for positive solutions.
So, a lot of the times when I've been talking to people about wellness and about physical health, I have come across these ideas about how it helps, yoga helps keep the body and the mind calm. But something which I've never come across and something which I would like to hear from you is, one of the chapters in your book says how at times it's okay to be a little selfish, it's okay to prioritize yourself. Now, this is something that we've not learned as children, because when we were growing up, our parents always taught us to keep ourselves at the last, prioritize the others, because that's part of good mannerism. That's something that a lot of mothers, even today, would be teaching their kids. Why do you say that, at times to prioritize yourself, to be a little selfish, to be kind only when you have surplus is important? Was there any incident that led to this change in attitude? Because, the generation that you come from, I'm sure you were taught exactly the opposite of it. So while you were growing up or professionally, what happened that changed your attitude?
You're right. I belong to a generation where my mother taught me to be nice to everyone and rather keep a low profile, and that is exactly what I was doing. But over the years, my personal observation has been, if you keep a low profile out of modesty, that because you are nice, people make you feel low. They won't say that you are nice. They'll suddenly feel like, if somebody so well placed in life and having everything, so if that person is prioritizing me, so I must be special. It's not that she is nice. So this has been my experience. I've seen that. So I strongly feel, if you do not give importance to yourself, in all likelihood no one will. So when you are always prioritizing others, you are sending a message across that they come first and you come second. Because human psychology is all about visuals. They see you doing that and they'll do that. I don't blame anybody for doing that, because why I allow myself to be treated that way, why I'm prioritizing others always. And then you feel, I'm sure you also must have been in some situations where you must have felt yourself that as if you are so nice to everybody, yet you are always at the receiving end. So it is that attitude of kind of pleasing others, because you feel they are your relatives, they are your friends, they are nice, they are your neighbors, they are your co-workers. But you have to draw a line somewhere, that from here my self-respect starts. If I am prioritizing you, you have to prioritize me. Otherwise, and I, even in my book I have said that be nice to everyone and don't be mean to people. But if somebody is mean to you, then you have to kind of hit back. See, otherwise, you will always feel as if you are emotionally shortchanged. So.
A lot of the times I've come across this this argument that even though humility is a rare virtue, and we would all like our kids, we ourselves would like to be humble, we would like our kids to have that virtue when they grow up. But do you think humility is often mistaken to be a part of your weakness, and is that what you faced quite often, because of which you've penned down these thoughts in your book?
Yes, I believe that's exactly what I felt. I'll tell you about one incident. In fact, there have been many which shaped my perception, where I reset my priorities. I'm only talking about setting your priorities, right? You have to keep yourself also in the priority list, which we normally don't do, being women. Maybe we are taught that way, that keep yourself at the end of your list, prioritize others. But times are changing, right? People don't see you that way. I'll tell you about one incident. There was a family of 2 daughters, and when they got married, so 2 sons-in-law became the part of their family. One incidentally was very nice too sweet, too accommodating, while the other happened to be the exact opposite, haughty, throwing his weight around, attention seeker. And the sweet one would always say, whenever he came over, he would say, मेरे लिए बस खिचड़ी बना दो, so that just don't want you to like have too much pressure just because I'm here. And incidentally, they would always make khichdi for him. And when the other son-in-law came, who was very haughty and who wanted to be fussed over, this is what they did. They would go to the market and bring hundreds of things, and घर में भी 56 व्यंजन बना रहे हैं. And even when both the sons-in-law were there at any given point of time in the same house for some event, I mean, the sweet one was neglected. And the other one, the one who should have been neglected ideally, the one, who is not nice and who is just throwing his weight around, he got prioritized.
But the counter argument to this would be that why not say what you want? Why be modest and keep your desires or your wishes to yourself? So if there are expectations, why not say it aloud and the expectations will be met? Don't you think that is also a counter argument that is quite valid?
This is what I have said in my book. I said you have to, if you don't like something, just say it. Nobody can read your mind, because I'm saying I don't blame anybody. Then if I feel I am at the receiving end, then I blame myself, right? Why, if I have to call a spade, why I haven't done that? The other person would not know, right, that you don't like it.
When you've called a spade, I mean, I don't know whether it was in your personal space or the professional space, but then what was the counter reaction? Did it impact your relationships within family at your professional space?
I believe like if it's not just, the book is not just about my experiences. I've talked about several people, right? Something that happened with my friend, something that happened with a distant cousin, like, and something that happened to my neighbors, So it is not basically personally my experience, it's basically my observation as well from what I have seen in society happening almost in every other family. But I feel wherever it has been personal experience, I felt like the day I started finding myself, I lost others. Earlier, in order to please everybody, I had lost myself. But the day I thought, no, now I have to find myself, then it was time to lose others, because they can't accept your changed behavior. It is in any relationship from day one, the way you start the relationship. If you are aggressive from day one, they'll take you for that. Oh, वो ऐसे ही है, कोई बात नहीं, उसका behavior ऐसा ही है. And if you are too nice, and then after some time you start asserting yourself, and suddenly they can't take it. It is like somebody who is nice, and out of 99 out of 100, that person has prioritized others, but only once, if she or he has not been able to meet their expectations, they'll start saying all those things. My God, how did she behave like that? How could she do that? But while the other person, I'm talking about somebody toxic and somebody self-centered person, if that self-centered person does just one thing out of 100, I mean, he will be so praised to the skies.
Can we have a balance where there is a mix of both? The others are happy and you don't end up losing yourself. Is it that difficult? And I ask you this because you've reached a position wherein your experiences will count. Those who are watching us, those who are in similar situations will have something to take away.
I believe everyone will have to pitch in. Anybody, like, if you change, for example, if A has been very nice and then she suddenly feels that I need to change, people are not prioritizing me, right? I have also to think of my self-respect, because like I said, if you don't prioritize yourself, nobody is likely to do that for you. So when you start that change, the moment you change, others should also understand. Like, so there has to be that maturity in relationship. Basically every relation, there when any two persons, whether they are friends, whether they are husband wife, they are even sisters or brothers, siblings, right, it also happens. So everybody has to understand the other person's, like, if she is prioritizing me, I also have to prioritize her, or she is respecting me, I have to respect. I've only talked about that. I'm not saying be needlessly aggressive. No, there is no need for that. Be very nice, because see, we all need to be together.
Absolutely.
Right, we are social beings, so we need others to be happy. But if you are not getting your due, and the others are not concerned about your self-respect, so that
Certainly,
is
and
where
the lesson here is that do prioritize others, but not at your cost.
exactly.
Another interesting aspect that I found in your book is you've mentioned about the Gen Y lingo. Of course, when you wrote the book, the Gen Y lingo was something that was new to you. Now, when we are talking to generations past, the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, which is already growing up. There is a learning and there is a lesson for the parent as well, which and in which your experience can count and help all the young mothers. Do you think it's important as parents, and especially as mothers, as Indian mothers take the onus of raising the child? Do you think it's important for parents to understand the context of the child so as to bridge that generational gap?
Yes, that's very important, because as the children grow up, so far as they are very young, parents are there to guide them, to help them grow. But when they become teenagers, then they start feeling like they know everything. So in order for the parents to remain relevant in their children's life, because after all the children are their priority, so they have to understand what they are going through. They have to go to their level. This is what I have done. See, for example, right, I'll tell you about my child. Even my son, when he started becoming conscious of himself and his surroundings, 2 years old, 3 years old, since then I have treated him as an individual having his own opinion, having his own mind. So I would always discuss with him. I have never slapped him in his life. He's 20 plus now. Never hit him. And sometimes even if I jokingly say ki ek thappad padega, my son says, "Mama, ek din maar ke dikha do." So it is like, I used to tell him when he was very small, I would tell him, do you know it is so easy to slap and then just do my work. I am already hard pressed for time. I sit with you for 2-3 hours, we discuss. So and then he was very small at that time, and then he understood. And like I'll tell you about one very interesting example. He was 3 years old and he was to participate in a fancy dress competition in his school. He was a preschooler at that time. I wanted him to become a farmer, because I thought that has good potential of earning some prize. And every time I would ask him to repeat after me, I am a farmer from Punjab. He wanted to be a policeman, and every time I would say farmer, he would say I am a policeman from Punjab. It happened 2-3 times. He would always replace farmer with policeman, and then I let him be. I said he has his own mind, his own opinion, he wants to be. And he was very happy and he performed well, and he actually earned second prize. And about this generation gap also you talked about. There's another incident. Once a distant relative asked me, the mother of a teenager, she was very worried. She said, my daughter wants to go out for a movie and they are going in a group. There are boys also. I said, see, when you have already put her in a co-ed school, so obviously, so they all move around also. This is, this happened around 10-15 years back. So she said, no, how can I let her go? There are boys also. I said, why don't you do one thing? First, call them over a cup of tea, call them home, call the whole group home, and get to know them, get to know their parents as well. Then you will know, they are all studying together. And this is what she did. So, this is how we have to try to reduce that generation gap. What is the definition of generation gap? It is the absence of that emotional connect with your child.
So, while it's important to bridge the generational gap, as you said, make friends with them and, come down to the level of where they are so as to understand the context that they are in. At the same time, it's also important to give them the space, because you will often see youngsters, and particularly in their teenage, they want their own space, they want their own privacy. So, as parents, there is something that you do not fully approve of, something that your child is doing. You don't exactly know what's happening, you just have a faint idea of what's happening. You don't want to ask the child about it, but you also want the child to follow the right path and not land up in some kind of a trouble or do something wrong. Have you ever dealt with that situation? Of course, your son is now big enough, but have you dealt with situations like these, or have you come across people who have been in such situations, and how do you deal with it?
My personal experience has been like, if something like this is there, where there is a disagreement, so we'll have a long chat, we'll discuss, and whenever he disagrees with me, one word will tell me he is going to disagree. He'll start with "Mama," respectfully. I know he's going to disagree with me whenever he says that. Like I said earlier also, see, there has to be a meeting of minds somewhere. A few steps you will go forward, and a few steps you ask your children to come forward. There has to be a meeting of minds, because they are so precious for you, right? Nuclear family, so parents are important for children, and children are important for parents. So you have to find a way and give them guided freedom, like let them do, but give them this confidence. Tell them that they can discuss anything with you, no matter what. We'll find even if there is any problem, we'll find a solution. So this is how I have handled all my situations. He knows, he discusses a lot of things with me, and in fact at times he says that his friends also are surprised, you discuss everything with your mother. So it's like, I tell him, it's like I can give you the best advice. This is what I tell him.
Okay, so after that very serious conversation, come back to another aspect, and quite interesting, that I found in your book. You've mentioned about the power of native language in meeting and greeting people when either they come to our country or we happen to visit their country, and you've mentioned some instances. You also worked as a simultaneous interpreter. You've traveled with Prime Minister Modi a couple of times. Tell us about how has your experience been, and how does it change the outlook of someone when you greet them or initiate a conversation with them in their language? We've seen the Prime Minister often do that.
See, that has been my personal experience too. I have somehow always tried that. Even if I know one word, I would try that. And you have that immediate connect with them, and you get their attention. Though it was never my intention to get their attention. See, it so happened, once I went to the US, and it was a personal visit. I visited my sister-in-law, and she had invited the Indians living there. So one couple was Tamilian. So I knew one word, vanakkam. So when I was introduced that they are from Tamil Nadu, I just said vanakkam. They were on seventh heaven. They were so happy. They were, and there was another couple, and whose native language was Telugu. They came to me, "Can you say something in Telugu?" I said, "No, I cannot," because maybe they were away from their motherland and living in a foreign country. So to listen to their language spoken by somebody else, even if it was one word. And then I came back, and later on my sister-in-law told me they invited them to dinner, and then they asked for me. So then when they were told that I have already left for India, they were so disappointed. They were so disappointed. They said, in fact, this dinner was arranged only for her. We wanted to meet her. So I was like, it's such a pleasant surprise. You just greet somebody in their language with just one word, and you get that immediate connect. And there was another incident. There was going to be a high profile visit of a big leader. So a day before that, the delegation was here to see the arrangements, right? So I was also there overseeing the arrangements, being the senior officer. And when I saw those senior officers like over there to see arrangement from the Russian embassy, I just greeted them again with one word. I said, "Zdravstvuyte." Immediately they looked at me and they were so happy. "Zdravstvuyte, zdravstvuyte." So this has been a wonderful experience. It always makes me happy if it's like I have explained that. I respect all languages, but mother tongue is like mother. It's like there are so many relations we have, but mother is mother.
Another aspect related to language, wherein on one side you talk about the power of language and greeting somebody in their own language and the impact it makes. Another aspect that wherein you've mentioned how your attire is also a perception of the kind of languages you will speak. Now, you've been in government service for quite long. You've been wearing the Indian formal. And when you wrote the book, you've written how people were surprised to see you speak fluent English. We're talking at least, several years later, at least more than a decade later. Do you see that perception having changed? Has the Indian society at large, been more accepting to women who are, dressed in Indian formal, yet speaking English, and people don't react the way they did when you wrote the book?
I'll tell you about that incident. See, my son was again 3 or 4 years old, and he was to take part in some function. So I wanted him to sing a song that Nanna Munna Rahi Hu Desh Ka Sipahi Hu. There is one beautiful song. So I didn't have a cassette, so that at that time we used to have cassettes. So I thought how to give him practice. So once during lunch hour, I just rushed to Connaught Place, went to a very big showroom where they were having all music cassettes and all that. So and obviously I was with a friend and both of us were wearing saris. And I asked them, I said, आपके पास कोई ऐसा कैसेट है जिसमें वो ये वाला गाना हो? तो they said, no, we don't have it. Of course, he spoke in Hindi only. So he replied and he said, नहीं, we don't have it. लेकिन आप आगे चले जाइए, वहाँ जाके ना एक शॉप है, उनसे आप पूछ लीजिएगा कि पेट्रियाटिक सॉन्ग्स, आप उनको बोल दीजिएगा देशभक्ति के गाने की कैसेट दे दीजिए. I mean, he thought कि I would not be knowing the meaning of patriotic also only because I was attired in a sari. I mean, that was really interesting. And recently, maybe 2 weeks back, I had to go to market after going from office after 7 o'clock, and I thought it is difficult for me to wait for weekend, and so I thought I would just have a quick halt and collect my things. I had to collect something from the market, so I went to a regular shop, and so 2 or 3 sales girls were there. Madam, आपने साड़ी पहनी है, and they were like as if I was some kind of a juba. It is still happening. I don't know, even sari is not acceptable. Suits are still acceptable. Interestingly, because I am a government officer, so we wear saris, but in generally you don't see many women wearing saris. So that's an interesting part. But then,
so you've narrated 2 incidents, of course, years apart. So does that indicate that times are not changed? The perception somewhere still is that if you're in your Indian formal, if you're in your sari, or maybe even a salwar suit, perhaps if you're speaking English, will it still come up as a surprise?
I don't know why English is still treated as an elitist language.
So, while we've spoken about several aspects in your book that I particularly found interesting and which do cover a lot of daily problems of a lot of our viewers who are also watching us. However, one personal message that you think that you want your viewer to carry with him or her after reading your book?
I would like to give 2 messages. One is, don't blame yourself for anything, any decision of yours that has not been successful. Be always kind to yourself. Like supposing what happens, we start blaming ourselves if something has, we took a decision and it has gone south. So we start blaming ourselves. I want to say that whatever decision you took, you must have weighed the pros and cons of a given situation. Whatever information was available to you, you must have taken that decision based on that only. So we don't always get desired results. Don't blame yourself. Always be kind to yourself. As long as you have learned your lesson, that is the most valuable part. Like for example, I'll say if a close one, a close friend or a family member is in a similar situation, feeling dejected, feeling depressed for something that has gone wrong, how will you counsel that person? Obviously, you will not blame her, you will not scold that person. You will always say, no, don't worry, there is always tomorrow, work harder. So that is how we should be treating ourselves too, and always be kind to yourself, don't blame yourself. And second message is, forgive those who have hurt you, because if you hold the anger and the annoyance deep inside, it is only affecting your health. You won't be able to move on if you are tied to the past. So those who hurt you, and interestingly, if they get to know that you are still brooding over them, and every time their name is taken, your blood boils. So if they get to know that they still have that impact on you, they'll be happier. So just forget them, just forgive them, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you need to move on. You deserve peace. And I say that there is whatever has happened in the past cannot be undone. We have to forget the past and take our lessons from there, and because the present still needs to be taken care of and future still needs to be crafted.
You're right. So with that very inspiring message, we'll have to wind up the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast and sharing with us different aspects of your book, and which have learnings for a lot of viewers, especially the working women and the young mothers who will learn from your experiences and try and adapt and find solutions to problems that they face in their daily lives. Thank you very much for joining us on this special podcast, and it's been a pleasure having this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the interaction.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to you viewers, thank you very much for your time as well.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.